Hey, what's up, family? A word a day. It's been a few days, so I'm really excited because I've been missing a word a day. So here we go. A word a day. Today is February 26, 2020. And today's word of the day is Amygdala. So what is an amygdala? Well, first of all, let's just talk about what the spelling of it is. Amygdala is Amygdala. 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 So if you've never heard of this before, the amygdala is a roughly almond-shaped mass of gray matter inside each cerebral hemisphere involved with the experiencing of emotions. So when you're all in your feelings, as they say, when you're all in your feelings, this is your amygdala that's in full effect because it is involved with the experiencing of emotions. So let's talk about what the role is. And I'm going to go to an article. In fact, I'm going to go to Wikipedia first, and I'm going to give another definition that adds a little bit more to it. What's up, brother? Willie, how you doing, bro? Okay, so definition and function of the amygdala is one of two almond-shaped clusters, didn't know that, of nuclei located deep and medially within the temporal lobes of the brain in complex vertebrates, including humans, shown in research to perform a primary role in the processing of memory, decision-making, and emotional responses, including fear, anxiety, and aggression. The amygdalae are considered part of the limbic system. Do you know? Okay, check this out. The role of fear. Do you have any fears? For some people, the biggest fear may be death. For others, it may be public speaking. In fact, most humans will have at least one or more fear that they have in life, no matter how dangerous or innocent. But there's a reason for that. It helps us with self-preservation. This is why, and I'll say it again for the record, for those who have never heard me say this, many people support and appreciate and, really exalt those that are of religious discipline, like with Christianity, that exalt that scripture that says God has not given us the spirit of fear. And I always, even though I feel differently about the whole subject of it, I've always felt differently about that. Like, that's kind of strange, because even when I was younger, I didn't see fear as something that was a total negative. I saw fear as, like anything, too much of anything is not good. So I saw like debilitating fear, as not good, but not fear in general. Because I'm like, fear is what allows you to move the hell out of the way when a car is coming and you see that it's about to hit you. Like, that's fear, actually. Or to help save someone else, or whatever, even down to taking a test and all of a sudden your heart racing and you focusing more. That's fear, but that's a healthy fear. It's not debilitating. So yeah, like, we need a 2.0 to our scriptures. And I mean that seriously. But there's a reason for fear. Fear often helps us with self-preservation. We feel fear as well as related to emotions in order to protect ourselves from danger and to heighten our awareness. This awareness is thought to be controlled by a section of the brain known as the amygdala. Now, I saw something interesting here that said, what happens if the amygdala is damaged? And this is something I want to talk about for a few seconds, and then we're out of here. Thank y'all for hanging out. People tend to choose avoiding losses over acquiring gains, a behavior known as loss aversion. But people with damage to the amygdala are more likely to take bigger risks with smaller potential gains, DiMartino's study found. So it says, what happens in the amygdala? Damage to the brain's decision-making area may encourage dicey gambles. Hey Clyde, thanks for hanging out, homie. So it says, and this is the end of what I was just mentioning, 2 women with bilateral amygdala damage showed a dramatic reduction in loss aversion compared with age-matched control subjects on the series of experimental gambles, despite understanding full well the values and risk involved. So if you have damage to your amygdala, then it damages or it impedes your ability to assess risk, and values, and to make a decision, a decent or wise decision. Basically you're too damn risky when your amygdala is damaged. DiMartino also suspected that the amygdala was crucial for loss aversion based on earlier studies using functional magnetic resonance imaging. But these 2 rare cases with damage to the very structure in question allowed DiMartino to directly test his hypothesis. In functional MRI, you never know if the response is reflecting something else. With the amygdala injury, you have an on-off response, whereas healthy controlled subjects who stood to win $20, this is a test that they use, healthy controlled subjects who stood to win $20 but lose $15 were less likely to gamble than those who stood to win $50 but lose only $10. The 2 patients with amygdala damage were much less affected by the disparity between potential gains and losses. In some cases, they chose to gamble even when the potential losses outweighed the potential gains. So I think that's really interesting. I didn't know this before reading this today, that damage to your amygdala would change, how you saw things as far as your rationality with taking certain risks. So maybe some people that are out here doing things that are very risky or not mindful, maybe they have damage to their amygdala. It's worth a thought. It's worth testing. It's worth finding out. It's worth us having the conversation about it. So it says, lastly, the concept of loss aversion can be applied to many things. Take, for example, someone considering elective surgery. The more serious the possible complications, no matter how unlikely, the less likely he or she is to proceed. But DiMartino is especially interested in how loss aversion applies to money. And he says his dream would be an economic theory that could capture the complexities of human behavior based on real people and real brains, rather than assumptions, he explains. DiMartino's field of study is aptly named neuroeconomics. It is a more biological view of social science, he says. A lot of economic theorists think about humans as machines and forget about emotional processing. That's a really important point right there. So we need DiMartino in our our casinos, helping people to know when to take risk or not. So that's the word of the day, amygdala. Work on yours. I need to find out if there's a way. You know what? Let me do a quick search real quick and say, this is me, right? This is how I do. Let's say, how to take care of your amygdala. This is how I think, yeah. If it's possible, can you train your amygdala? Training the brain to treat itself is a promising therapy for traumatic stress. Let's see. Learn to love your amygdala, Psychology Today. So what I'll probably do is come back with another video that talks about how to do it. I'm skimming through. You're constantly receiving data. It enters the brain. As you peel back the layers, you begin to understand the chemistry behind your worry. You may develop a love-hate relationship with your amygdala. I'm scanning through. It's a long article too. Since the amygdala's motto is better safe than sorry, we all will be on the receiving end of plenty of false positives. as we have an increased number of false positive experiences, the amygdala will learn that encounters with uneven subway grates are pretty rare, and falling through one is nearly impossible. That's really interesting because it does show a very nuanced way of helping us. Okay, how do we get our amygdala? This is all the way down at the end. How do we get our amygdala to quiet down? Okay, this is how to quiet down. Well, we place it into a safe, reasonable facsimile of the scene in which we were frightened, and we let it hang out. So, this is interesting. So basically what they're saying is, if a person had a fear of stepping on those subway grates, like I remember when I was a kid, somewhere here in Baltimore, like downtown, there was these places on the sidewalk where we go from a sidewalk to just these grates over these big holes, and it was just a part of the sidewalk. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is interesting, because if I fell down one of these, like, that wouldn't be good. But I developed a relationship of safety with it, and I became rational about how likely was it that I would fall through, and therefore it allowed me to go about my day and not be paranoid, but also be safe, at the same time. So it says, they must have done a study in this article. They said every time you step on a subway grate and don't fall through the sidewalk, your amygdala takes in new information and learns to differentiate this very common occurrence from the one scary encounter, if you had a scary encounter. This system works pretty darn well. And they put darn, I'm gonna say damn well. That is, of course, unless we continue to tell ourselves that a threat is imminent. We'll address this tendency to talk ourselves into worrying in our next installment. And so that's the end of this article, and I'm interested to see what that next installment is. But lastly, before I go, I remember realizing this with a friend of mine who was the type of person where if something happened to him, it would always happen to him. And for the most part, I mean something negative, because I don't think he handled positivity the same way, or else it would have balanced itself out. So I really remember watching him have experiences like someone, bump into his car accidentally but not cause any damage, or someone give him some food at a restaurant that maybe they forgot to put something on it. Let's use that for example. And he just had this thing in his mind where if it happened one time, it would always happen. So that was his approach. It was literally like, I won't do this again because they will always forget to put X, Y, and Z on my sandwich. This is a pretty extreme case, but being a person that's always studying psychology, and I didn't even realize at the time that, why I was so fascinated with the way he looked at things, was that, I saw an extreme case of what happens with something like this, where you can have a fear and you can reinforce it yourself by either telling yourself something and continuing to have that as your thought instead of having different or new experiences, or giving yourself a chance to have new experiences, or just not plainly just putting yourself in situations where you can overcome your fear because you could appreciate the fact that your sandwich was made properly, or that you were in a certain place and no one bumped into your car, or these kind of things. So it really goes to a theory that I have about how to change minds, and that is that I ultimately feel that the best way to effectively positively change your mind is not so much the verbal aspect of trying to coerce or convince a person, but it's literally to have experiences that are the exact contrast of what you either expect or what you have been experiencing. And you just got to keep having those experiences, and you don't have to worry about trying to change. You will naturally change because you won't be able to avoid it. Your mind you can lie to yourself, but you can't lie to yourself when you keep having experiences. The experiences become your truth, not what you're telling yourself in your head. So that's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. That's amygdala. So that's what it means. That's how we cultivate it. That's what's happening there, and that's a word a day. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope this was helpful. If you care to help me to make more content like this or continue to make content like this, then look at the information that I have in the comment section of this video or the description, and I would greatly appreciate it. Other than that, as always, peace and be well, and I'll see you again for the next Word of the Day. Peace.